The night air in Veyroth smelled of pine and smoke, and every wolf in the kingdom had gathered beneath the full moon for the mating ceremony. Torches lined the stone courtyard, and the crowd stood in silence as the Alpha King, Chaol Draven, walked forward to find the mate the moon had chosen for him. Lyra Ashwood stood near the back, wrapped in a plain gray cloak, trying to make herself as small as possible. She came from one of the outer packs, a family with no title and no wealth, and she had only come because attendance was required of every wolf in the kingdom. She never imagined the bond would call to her, but when Chaol's eyes swept across the crowd, they stopped on her. He froze mid-step, the crowd murmured, his nostrils flared, and something in his chest tightened painfully, as though an invisible thread had pulled taut between them. He knew that pull, every wolf did. It was the mate bond, the one thing in Veyroth that could not be faked or forced. He walked toward her, and the crowd parted like water. Lyra's heart pounded. She had heard stories of what happened when the king found his mate, the celebration, the honor, the joining of two souls before the whole kingdom. She lowered her eyes as he stopped in front of her, afraid to hope for something she never thought could belong to her. Chaol studied her for a long moment. She was nothing like the noble daughters who had been paraded before him for years, dressed in silk and trained to charm him. She was quiet, plain, unremarkable, by the standards of his court. And still, the bond burned. He hated it. "She is not fit to stand beside a king," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. "I reject this bond," Chaol said, his voice flat, final. "She is not my mate." The words struck her like a blow. The bond bruise burned beneath her skin, an invisible wound that every wolf could feel when a mate was rejected. Lyra staggered back, tears stinging her eyes, humiliation crushing her chest. The whispers started immediately, pity from some, cruel laughter from others. She did not wait for the ceremony to end. She turned and walked away, her cloak billowing behind her, refusing to let the tears fall until she was far from the courtyard, far from his eyes, far from the kingdom that had just watched her be discarded like she was nothing. Chaol did not follow her. He told himself it was for the best. A king could not have a mate the court would mock. He returned to his duties, burying the small, quiet part of him that already regretted his own words. Months passed. Lyra rebuilt her life far from the palace, in a small village at the edge of Veyroth's borders. She worked hard, kept to herself, and slowly the sharp edges of her heartbreak dulled into something quieter, something she could carry without breaking under its weight. She told herself she did not need a king who did not want her. She told herself the ache beneath her skin, the faint pull she still felt some nights beneath the moon, meant nothing. She almost believed it. Meanwhile, in the palace, things had begun to change. The crops on the kingdom's outer farms withered without explanation. The moonlight itself seemed dimmer some nights, as though the sky mourned something. Packs that had always been strong grew weary, their senses dulled, their strength fading. The elders, worried, began to whisper among themselves. Something was wrong with the land, and no healer or blessing could explain it. Chaol noticed it first in himself. His strength, usually unshakable, felt as though it were slipping through his fingers like sand. His temper shortened. His sleep grew restless, plagued by dreams of silver eyes and a woman turning away from him beneath torchlight. He did not need anyone to tell him what was happening. He knew, somewhere deep down, that it had started the night he rejected her. Still, pride kept him from speaking it aloud. It was the elders who finally brought the truth to light. Deep within the palace archives, sealed behind locks that had not been opened in over 300 years, lay a scroll written by the kingdom's first ruler, a prophecy that had been all but forgotten, dismissed as legend by generations of kings who came after. The eldest advisor, a gray wolf named Ronan, who had served 3 kings before Chaol, unrolled the fragile parchment with trembling hands. His eyes moved slowly over the ancient words, and his face grew pale. "My king," he said quietly, "you need to see this." Chaol read the words himself, his jaw tightening with every line. "The throne of Veyroth shall not be inherited by blood alone. When the land grows weak and the king grows blind to what stands before him, The true queen shall reveal herself, not through favor, but through rejection. The one turned away beneath the full moon shall be the one the throne cannot survive without. Only when the king kneels before her, not as an alpha claiming what is his, but as a ruler recognizing what he almost lost, shall the land be restored. Chaol stared at the words until they blurred. He thought of Lyra's face that night, the way her eyes had widened just before he spoke, the way she had turned so quickly, as if she had expected to be hurt all along. He thought of the crowd's laughter, and how he had let it happen, had caused it, because he could not see past his own pride. The bond he had rejected wasn't just his loss. It was the kingdom's. "Find her," Chaol said, his voice rough. "Find her now." It took his men 3 days to track Lyra to the small village where she had settled. When Chaol arrived, he came alone, without his guards, without his crown, dressed simply so as not to draw attention. He found her outside a modest cottage, tending a small garden, her sleeves rolled up and her hair tied back loosely. She looked different, steadier. There was no trace of the trembling girl who had fled the courtyard months ago. When she saw him, she went still. "You have no right to be here," she said, her voice calm, but edged with something sharper than anger, something closer to exhaustion. Her name felt strange in his mouth, like something he had not earned the right to say. "I need to speak with you." "You made yourself very clear the last time we spoke," she said, turning back to her garden as though he were not standing there at all. "In front of everyone." "I was wrong," he said. She let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's it? You traveled all this way to tell me you were wrong?" "There is a prophecy," he said, "about the throne, about us." That made her pause, if only for a moment. She turned to face him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "And now that your kingdom is falling apart, you remember I exist." The words landed exactly where she meant them to. Chaol did not flinch away from them. He deserved worse. "You're right to be angry," he said. "You're right not to trust me. I threw away something I didn't understand the value of, and I hurt you in front of people who had no right to laugh at you. I can't undo that. I'm not asking you to forget it." "Then what are you asking?" "I'm asking for the chance to make it right. Not because the land is dying, not because of some old scroll. Because I was a coward that night, and I let my fear of what others thought matter more than what I felt the moment I saw you." He paused, his voice quieter now. "That was never about you not being enough. It was about me not being brave enough." Lyra studied him for a long moment, searching his face for the lie she expected to find. She did not find it. That, somehow, made it harder. "I spent months telling myself it didn't matter," she said, "that I didn't need you, or your kingdom, or your bond. I built a life here. A quiet one, and it was enough." "I'm not asking you to give that up," Chaol said. "I'm asking you to decide, on your own terms, what you want. Not because a prophecy says the land needs you. Not because I need you. Because I owe you the choice I never gave myself the courage to offer before." For the first time since he arrived, something in her posture softened, just slightly. "I don't know if I can trust that," she admitted quietly. "You don't have to yet," Chaol said, "but let me earn it." She did not answer him that day. She asked him to leave, and he did, without pressing her further, without demanding anything more than she was willing to give. It was, perhaps, the first time he had ever truly listened to her. Over the following weeks, Chaol returned, not as a king summoning a subject, but as a man trying to prove that his words were more than desperation. He helped repair a fence in her garden without being asked. He listened when she spoke of her family, her fears, the years she had spent believing she would never be enough for anyone. He did not push the subject of the bond, though it hummed quietly beneath both their skins, every time they stood near each other. Slowly, carefully, something began to shift. The kingdom, meanwhile, continued to weaken. The elders grew anxious, the packs restless, and rumors of the prophecy spread beyond the palace walls. Some blamed Lyra for being cursed. Others blamed Chaol for his pride. But Chaol refused to force the bond, no matter how urgently his advisors pressed him. "She has to choose this," he told Ronan one evening, staring out over the dying fields from the palace balcony. "If I take that choice from her again, I don't deserve to call myself her mate, prophecy or not. The next full moon approached swiftly, and with it, a tension that settled over the entire kingdom like a held breath. Lyra found Chaol standing alone near the edge of the forest that night, beneath a sky heavy with silver light. She had come on her own, without being summoned, and when he turned to see her standing there, something in his chest eased for the first time in months. "I'm not doing this because the kingdom needs saving," she said, before he could speak. "And I'm not doing this because a scroll written centuries ago decided my fate for me." "Then why are you here?" he asked softly. "Because for the first time, you gave me the chance to decide for myself," she said. "And I've decided I don't want to spend my life wondering what could have been, out of fear of being hurt again." "I won't hurt you like that again," Chaol said. "I swear it." "You'll have to prove that every day," she said. "Not just tonight." "I intend to." As the moon reached its highest point, something ancient stirred in the air between them. Lyra gasped as warmth spread across her collarbone, a soft silver light blooming beneath her skin in the shape of an old, elegant sigil, the mark of the moon goddess herself. Her eyes lifted to meet Chaol's, glowing faintly silver, mirroring the light in the sky above. Around them, the dying trees seemed to straighten. The wind carried a warmth that had been missing for months. In the distant fields, the wilted crops trembled, as though breathing again for the first time. Chaol felt the shift ripple through him too, the ache in his bones easing, his strength returning fuller than before, as though the kingdom itself exhaled in relief. He did not claim her. He did not declare her his in front of a crowd, the way he once might have. Instead, he knelt. Not as an alpha asserting his right over a chosen mate, but as a king, kneeling before the woman he had once let go, humbled by everything he had almost lost. "I should have knelt the first time," he said. "I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what that meant." Lyra reached out, resting her hand against his, feeling the bond settle fully between them, not with the desperation of a prophecy fulfilled, but with the quiet steadiness of two people finally choosing each other, freely and without condition. "I want equal say," she said. "In the kingdom. In everything. I won't be a queen in name only, kept quiet in some corner of the palace." "You'll have it," Chaol said without hesitation. "You'll have all of it." She helped him to his feet, and together, they turned back toward the kingdom, the moonlight bathing the path ahead of them in silver. When they returned to the palace gates, the court that had once watched her be rejected now stood in stunned silence, witnessing the sigil glowing softly at her collarbone, undeniable proof of what the prophecy had promised all along. Ronan was the first to bow. The others followed, one by one, until the entire court knelt before her. Not because a king commanded it, but because the truth could no longer be denied. Lyra walked through the gates she had once fled in shame, not as the girl who had been humiliated and cast aside, but as the queen the kingdom had always needed, standing beside the king who had finally learned that some things could not be commanded, only earned. The land healed in the weeks that followed. The crops grew full again, the packs regained their strength, and the whispers that once mocked Lyra's name turned instead into quiet respect. She never forgot the pain of that first rejection, and she never pretended it hadn't shaped her, but she also never let it define what came after. Every day, Chaol proved himself to her, not through grand gestures, but through the small, steady choices that build real trust. And every night, beneath the full moon, the sigil at her collarbone glowed softly, a reminder that sometimes, the things we are most afraid to hope for are the very things fate has been quietly waiting to give us all along.